Welcome to HFY Codex. If you love epic sci-fi stories where humanity shines, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for thrilling HFY adventures. Join us and be part of the journey. The broken one, she had no name, only a number on a tag, and no legs to carry her away from the place that hated her. She was born in a breeding lab deep inside the capital of the Varnak Empire, a place where females were designed only for one purpose: to produce strong warriors, but her body was incomplete. Her legs never formed, and so the council marked her as unfit and placed her in a cold glass pod hidden from the world. Years passed, and she remained in that pod, awake but silent, watching other healthy females being taken away, rewarded, praised, while she was forgotten like broken trash. Guards passed by her every day, never looking at her. Scientists ignored her, and machines kept her barely alive. She had no friends, no family, no future. Just a quiet sorrow building inside her chest, until one day, a human walked in. Leo was not supposed to be there. He was an engineer from Earth, visiting for a peace mission, but curiosity pulled him through an unlocked door into the old part of the lab. The room smelled like metal and dust, the lights flickered, and the sound of soft breathing echoed in the silence. He stopped when he saw her half hidden behind a broken metal frame, inside a glass pod, her eyes wide open and staring at him. For a moment, neither moved. Then she blinked. Leo stepped closer, reading the tag, shocked by what it said. Failed unit, no legs, non-reproductive, do not activate. He looked at her face, not at her body, and saw tears sliding down her cheeks. She was alive, awake, and aware, and she was crying. Something inside him twisted, a deep pain, as if he had just found something the world had thrown away, but still breathing. Still hoping, he placed his hand on the glass and whispered, "I see you." She moved her hand weakly, touching the inside of the pod's glass, trying to match his fingers with hers. Leo made a choice in that moment, without thinking twice. He cracked open the control panel, typed fast, hacked the security lock, and deactivated the stasis system. Alarms began to flash, lights turned red, and a mechanical voice shouted, "Unauthorized access detected." Leo didn't stop. He pulled open the pod, caught her light body in his arms, and turned to run. Guards shouted from down the hall. Boots hit the metal floor hard, but Leo didn't look back. She was light, too light. Her body weak and cold, but her eyes stayed locked on his face the whole way. Outside, his ship was hidden behind a scrapyard wall, half buried under old shuttle parts and metal junk. He slammed the door shut just as the lab soldiers arrived, and his ship lifted off into the dark sky before they could shoot it down. The girl lay on the small bed inside his cabin, barely breathing, her skin pale and her chest rising slowly. Leo placed a warm blanket over her and connected medical tubes to feed her energy and nutrients. She flinched at first, unused to touch, but then calmed as he smiled at her. "It's okay now. You're safe," he said, unsure if she understood. Her eyes followed every word from his lips, but she didn't speak. Leo sat beside her, confused, angry, and broken-hearted. "How could anyone leave you like that?" he whispered, more to himself than to her. Her fingers moved slowly and pointed to herself, then to her missing legs, then to her womb. Then she shook her head. Leo understood what she meant. They thought she was useless because she couldn't walk or give birth. He leaned forward and touched her hand. "You're not broken," he said softly. "They just didn't know how to see you." She stared at him, and for the first time in her life, someone saw her not as a failure, but as a person. He showed her a tablet screen, drawing a simple stick figure of her with legs, then showed another with mechanical legs. Her eyes widened, and she slowly reached out to touch the screen, nodding weakly. Leo's heart raced. not because of fear, but because something beautiful had just begun in a quiet corner of space. On a ship flying far from anyone who would call her useless, a human and an alien girl shared something rare: hope, and in her eyes, shining softly in the dark, was the first spark of a life she never thought she would have. The escape route? The ship shook as it entered lightspeed. Stars stretched into long lines outside the small window. And Leo finally let out a breath he had been holding since they escaped the lab. The girl lay on the bed, weak but awake, her eyes moving slowly, scanning the ceiling as if it were a sky she had never seen before. Leo adjusted the medical lines and checked the vitals. His hands, careful, gentle, like someone touching glass. She flinched slightly when he touched her arm, but then her gaze settled on his face, confused but calm. "You're safe now," Leo said softly, pointing to the sealed door, then to himself. "I won't let them take you again." She didn't speak, not because she couldn't, but because the words in his language were still strange to her tongue. Instead, she lifted her hand and slowly traced a line on the metal wall beside her. It was shaky, almost invisible, but when Leo leaned closer, he saw it: a symbol. A circle with two broken lines. He didn't understand it, but he knew it meant something. Maybe her name, maybe a word from her people. Later that day, as she rested, Leo sat at his workbench and opened his old blueprints. Years ago, he had designed prosthetic legs for injured human soldiers, but none of them were like her. Her anatomy was different. Thinner bones, more flexible joints, different nerve patterns. He scanned her form carefully, never touching without permission, using only sensors and light mapping as she watched him from the bed. He showed her drawings of leg designs on a screen. She pointed at one, the simplest design, and gave a small nod. Leo smiled. "Good choice. We'll start with this." While the ship flew silently through untracked space, Leo worked for hours, his fingers flying across tools, welding frames, shaping alloy into smooth curves. She watched him closely, her eyes blinking slowly, and once she reached out to touch the metal pieces. Her hands were small, but steady, and she seemed to understand more than he expected. Leo smiled. "Want to help?" She gave a tiny nod, and for the first time, she joined him at the table. Sitting awkwardly on the bench with her body supported by a sling, they worked side by side, and although they didn't speak the same language, they understood each other. Through hands and eyes, Leo showed her how to tighten screws, how to polish edges, and she caught on quickly, surprising him with her focus. Later, while the machines shaped synthetic muscle and bone, they ate together, quietly, sharing simple food from Earth. She tasted each bite carefully, her face curious and thoughtful, and when she found something she liked, she smiled with her eyes closed. That night, as Leo walked past her resting spot, he saw something drawn in the dust on the wall. It was two figures, one with no legs, and the other holding her hand. Standing tall beside her, he stared at it for a long time. 2 days later, the prototype legs were ready. Smooth silver frames with soft blue light running through the nerves. Leo explained with gestures and gentle words, "We can try now, only if you feel ready." She looked at the legs, then at him, and nodded with a steady breath, with care. Leo lifted her onto the bench and gently attached the prosthetics to the soft ports near her hips. At first, her body twitched in shock, nerves adjusting to the foreign connection. But she didn't cry or panic. Instead, she grabbed his hand tightly and looked him in the eyes. He squeezed back. "I'm here." A few minutes later, the legs activated, and she took her first step. It was small, shaky. But when her foot touched the ground and held steady, something inside her changed. She let go of his hand and took another step, then another, until she stood upright, alone, trembling but standing. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain, but from something deeper: freedom. Leo stood still, watching her, proud, amazed, and humbled all at once. She turned to him and smiled, a full smile that lit up her whole face, then pointed to her chest and said one word. Broken but clear. Zara. Leo's heart skipped. Zara. That's your name, he repeated softly. She nodded, and this time she walked toward him on her new legs. Step by step, no longer crawling, no longer broken. The legs Zara stood in the center of the small training bay, her new legs humming softly beneath her. Each step she took was smoother than the last. Her body learning quickly, her mind sharper than Leo had imagined. She had spent years watching the world from inside a pod, but now she moved through space freely, her hands touching every surface, her eyes alive with wonder. Leo adjusted the sensors on the wall, tracking her balance, stride, and nerve feedback. But mostly, he just watched. It wasn't about the tech anymore, was about her. Zara stumbled once, then laughed, a sound so new and fragile that Leo paused mid-scan. She looked at him, trying again, and walked toward him with her arms wide. Like a child showing off a new trick, he clapped slowly, smiling, and she clapped too, copying his rhythm. With joy in her face, the ship became their home, their world. As they drifted through the stars in hiding, they spoke using pictures, hand signs, and short words she learned quickly. Food, walk, safe, name, sleep. Each day she repeated the same words, adding new ones, and sometimes creating her own gestures when language wasn't enough. One evening, after they finished eating, Zara pointed at the empty plate, then at her stomach, then at Leo, and then drew a small circle on the table. Leo tilted his head, confused. Circle. She shook her head, then placed both hands on her stomach gently and repeated the circle motion again. Leo blinked, unsure what she meant, until she took his hand and placed it lightly over her belly. Then looked at him without blinking. Something in his chest tightened. She repeated a word slowly, almost perfectly. Life. He leaned back, stunned. Then checked the medical logs she had passed through earlier. The scans showed something unexpected. Her internal system had started changing. Weeks ago, new signals forming in the dormant reproductive areas of her body. Somehow, the energy from the prosthetics, the tech he built, had triggered a complete regeneration, not just of nerves and muscles, but deep biological structures her body had begun preparing for something it was never allowed to have. Leo looked at her in shock. Zara, you're not just walking, you're healing. She didn't understand all the words, but she understood his face, his awe, and his concern. She nodded slowly and whispered again. Life, then touched his chest gently. You. He sat down beside her, breath shaking. How could this happen? Zara pressed her forehead to his and closed her eyes, and for a long time they just sat like that, breathing together, two lives built from broken pieces. The next day, Leo began working on stabilizing her body, tuning the prosthetics to adjust. For the new growth happening inside her, Zara followed him everywhere, asking questions with her eyes, helping with tools, laughing when wires sparked or parts rolled across the floor. They became a team, two hands building something no one else believed was possible. At night, they sat beside the wide glass window, watching stars pass by, and Leo taught her constellations and names of distant worlds. Zara, in return, told him stories from her people using pictures and broken words. One night, she showed him a sketch, two small figures standing beside a tall one. A family. Leo swallowed hard, looking at her. Then at the drawing, then back at her. You want this? She nodded once. With you. Silence followed, but it wasn't heavy. It was full of meaning neither of them had words for. Outside, the galaxy moved on, unaware that in one small, silent ship, a new kind of family had begun to grow. Zara stood, walked to him, and rested her head against his chest, her arms wrapping around him gently. She whispered a word, one he had never heard from her before. Home. And Leo, with tears rising in his eyes, whispered back, yeah, Zara, this is home now. Her legs, once a symbol of what she lacked, had become the beginning of everything new. And with each step she took toward him, she wasn't just learning how to walk. She was learning how to live. The council's order, the peace, did not last forever, and neither did the silence. It began with a soft ping from Leo's communication array, a signal hidden inside a system update, almost invisible, almost harmless. But Leo had lived through war, through betrayal, through escape, and he knew what fear felt like crawling up the spine. He checked the logs, and his heart dropped. The transmission came from the Varnock Central Authority, and it had only 3 words in it: we found you. Zara was asleep in the next room, curled on the padded bench, one hand resting gently on her growing stomach. She looked peaceful, dreaming maybe. Unaware of the storm coming their way, Leo walked to her slowly, his footsteps heavier than usual, and sat beside her. She opened her eyes and smiled until she saw his face, then sat up straight. Danger? He nodded slowly and showed her the signal, a flashing red mark on the screen. She stared at it without blinking, then reached for his hand. Run. Leo shook his head. No more running. They had run from planet to planet, hiding, surviving, building something beautiful from the wreckage of what others had thrown away. But now the council knew, and they weren't coming to talk. They were coming to take her, to erase what didn't fit their design. Zara sat still for a moment, then stood on her legs, and walked to the middle of the ship. She pulled up a hologram of the Varnock Council, tapped a few commands, and brought up images of the breeding pods. She pointed to them, then pointed to herself, then shook her head firmly. No. Leo understood. You won't go back. Zara nodded. They broke me. She said slowly, you built me. He walked over and touched her shoulder. Then we fight. They didn't have an army. They didn't have weapons. Just old tools, a fast ship, and a message no one else was willing to say: that love, real love, was stronger than design. Leo sent a signal to a hidden rebel colony orbiting the moons of Calarisate, a place where hybrids, exiles, and defectors lived free. He had helped them once with prosthetics and repairs, and now he asked for shelter. And maybe something more. The reply came quickly: coordinates and a promise. If she is who you say she is, we will stand. 3 days later, they landed on a cold metal platform surrounded by scrap towers and camouflaged domes. Outlaws and survivors stepped forward, blinking at the sight of Zara walking beside Leo, holding his hand with steady grace. An older hybrid female gasped, she walks, and another whispered, she was declared non-viable. Zara stepped forward, pulled up her tunic gently, and showed her growing belly. There was silence, long and heavy, until one of the hybrid males dropped to his knees and whispered, she is the proof. News spread like fire across the underground network, and soon messages flooded in from broken colonies, ruined labs, even quiet rebellions waiting for hope. But with every light of support, another shadow followed. The council broadcast a new decree: return the failed one and the human criminal. Their union is a danger to balance. They were no longer hunted for escape, they were hunted for existing. Zara stared at the council's broadcast, standing tall in a room full of survivors, and asked Leo to help her speak. He translated her words to the crowd as she moved slowly to the center of the hall. I was born broken, she said. They called me useless, empty, silent. I walked because a human gave me legs, but I lived because he gave me love. They fear our child, not because it is wrong, but because it is right. Her voice grew stronger with every word. You are not broken. I am not broken. We were only unloved. The room exploded in cheers, hands raised, tools slammed on metal. Voices shouting her name, Zara, who had once been thrown away, now stood as a leader without asking to be one. Leo looked at her, his eyes soft, whispered under his breath, "You were never the weak one." She turned to him, touched her stomach, and whispered back, "Neither is our child." They had made something greater than escape. They had made something worth protecting. The hidden world asterisk, the rebel colony, was buried deep beneath the metal crust of an old mining planet. Hidden from satellites, cloaked from scans, guarded by outcasts who had nothing left to lose. Inside its maze-like tunnels, children with patchwork. Skin ran free, machines hummed like music, and old tech was stitched together like patchwork armor. It was a strange place, but Zara felt safe there. Like the walls didn't care about her missing history. Only the life she carried now. Leo and Zara were given a small room near the lower reactors. Warm and private, with soft mats and glowing blue walls that changed color with her breath, Zara often stood near the mirror, touching her reflection. Her legs shining faintly in the light, her belly beginning to swell. She smiled now, more often. But her eyes still carried weight, like she was waiting for something to shatter. One morning, while she was resting, Leo sat with a local medtech named Rini, a hybrid healer who once worked for the Varnak Council but had escaped years ago. Rini scanned Zara's body using biolenses and muttered quietly, her long fingers tracing the data that floated in the air. "She's changing," Rini said. "Her body isn't just growing organs, it's rewriting itself, evolving beyond what any of us thought possible." Leo leaned in, trying to understand. Is it safe? Rini looked him in the eye, serious but calm, for her. Yes, she paused, but for the Council's lies. No. Leo swallowed hard and glanced back at the room where Zara slept, her hand always resting on her stomach like she was guarding. A treasure later, Zara asked to visit the children's chamber, a wide-open room where hybrid kids learned language, balance, and basic survival. When she walked in, the children gasped, seeing her legs, then her belly, then her smile. They surrounded her like light around a star, touching her arms, her fingers, asking her in broken words, "How? Who gave? Are you real?" Zara knelt slowly and whispered, "Human gave," then placed a child's small hand on her belly. "Now I give." The children stared, silent and amazed, and one of them said, "She's like us, but more word." Spread again, faster this time, and from nearby systems. Small ships began to arrive. Some carried old fighters, some carried wounded. Some carried pregnant hybrids who had been hiding for years. They came because of Zara, because she wasn't a story, she was real. And she was proof that love could grow even in broken soil. The colony's council gathered in the upper tower, a round chamber lit by solar cracks in the ceiling. Leo stood beside Zara as she addressed them, this time with full sentences. Her voice slow but clear. "They said I had no worth," she began, "no use, no future. But look at me." She turned slowly, showing her legs, her strength. "And her child. I was not built for war. I was built for change." One of the elders, a scarred male with half-metal arms, leaned forward. "And what would you have us do?" Zara raised her head. "Let us be seen," she said. "Let others know we exist. That love does not follow design." There was silence, long and uncertain, until a quiet voice said, "And when the council comes." Zara didn't hesitate. "We do not hide." The room erupted in whispers, some nervous, some afraid. But many stood and nodded. They had hidden too long, feared too long. And Zara's presence had lit something inside them, something they forgot they carried. Later that night, Leo sat with Zara in their room. Candles flickering around them, the air soft and calm. He brushed her hair back and whispered, "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known." Zara smiled. Tired, but peaceful because of you. He touched her belly and said, because of all three of us. She leaned her head on his shoulder and closed her eyes, breathing steady, her body full of warmth and quiet power. They had no army, no planet of their own, but what they had now was louder than any weapon: truth, and the courage to share it. And outside their room, in the halls of a hidden world, the whispers of her name kept growing louder. One voice at a time, the return threat, the warning, came as a shadow in the sky. A Varnock destroyer appeared just beyond the edge of the hidden world's sensor range, not broadcasting a name, not hailing any channel. Just floating in orbit like a cold, silent eye. The rebels scrambled. Shields were powered up, escape tunnels secured, weapons pulled from dusty crates. But everyone knew what it meant. They hadn't come to negotiate, they had come to erase. Zara stood on a balcony of the upper dome, her long hair pulled back, the wind brushing across her face, her hand resting over her child. Beside her, Leo stared at the black shape above them. Jaw tight, mind racing. They didn't wait long. She nodded, calm and still. They are afraid. Rinny joined them minutes later with a message tablet, her face unreadable as she handed it to Zara. It was a council order, clear and brutal. Return the asset immediately. The union is genetically impure. The child must be terminated. Zara read the words without blinking, then dropped the tablet to the ground and crushed it beneath her foot. Leo whispered, "They called you an asset." Zara shook her head. "They see only code, not life." The colony's leaders gathered. In the deep council chamber, the lights dimmed, the walls thick with fear and memory. Zara and Leo entered together, and all eyes turned to them. Some worried, some proud, many uncertain. The oldest among them stood slowly, his spine bent from age and war. "They will bomb us," he said. "They have before." Zara looked around the room, then raised her voice. "Then let them see what we've become. They erased me once," she said, stepping forward. "And I returned with life. They called me non-breeding." Her voice steady now. "And I now carry the future." Murmurs filled the room. And then silence fell again as she asked one simple question. "Will you hide again, or will you walk with me?" A young hybrid warrior stepped forward first, one eye replaced with glass, his arms still wrapped in support wires. "I'll walk," then a mother. Holding her hybrid child, "We all will." By nightfall, every hand was working, fortifying domes, activating old drones, positioning shield generators around the surface cracks. Zara stayed near the heart of the colony, walking through every corner, touching hands, listening to names, reminding them of what they stood for. Leo built a transmitter that reached deep into the outer systems. Broadcasting Zara's message into black space, she stood in front of the recorder, shoulders straight, eyes full of flame, and spoke into the stars. "I was born in silence," she said. "They took my voice, my legs, my place in the world. But I found life. I found love. I found my steps, and now they come again to take it." Her hand touched her belly gently. "But they will not take this." Ships from outlaw systems began to respond, small, worn crafts carrying rogues, defectors, and forgotten warriors. They didn't come for war. They came for proof, for meaning, for something they had lost. The sky filled with strangers who had once believed they were alone, now orbiting together over the hidden world. When the Varnock destroyer sent its second message, last warning, surrender the subject or face elimination. Zara stepped onto the outer platform and replied herself. She sent a single image, a scan of her unborn child's heartbeat, pulsing strong and steady in the womb of someone they had once thrown away. The destroyer did not respond, but it did not fire either. For hours, it hovered, watching, and then, without warning, it turned slowly and vanished back into the void. The colony erupted in shouts, cheers, hands raised to the sky. But Zara remained quiet, holding Leo's hand tightly. "They didn't leave because they gave up," she said softly. "They left because they saw something they couldn't destroy." Leo looked at her, his eyes full. "What's that?" She turned to him with a small smile, hope, and beneath them, deep inside the walls of a world that had once hidden in fear, new life kicked gently against her skin, strong and ready to be born into the stars. The new mother asterisk, the wind was soft the day her labor began. The sky above the colony was clear. No ships in orbit, no signals of threat, only silence. As if the stars themselves were holding their breath for her, Zara gripped Leo's hand tightly. As her body trembled, pain sharp but full of purpose, each wave drawing the child closer, she lay on a padded bed made by the colonists. The walls around her covered with glowing handprints of children who had touched her belly for luck. Rinny knelt beside her, calm and steady, placing her hands gently on Zara's stomach. "You're ready," she said. "It's time." Leo sat behind Zara, holding her up, whispering soft words into her ear. Even when she couldn't answer, "Breathe." "With me," he said. "We're doing this together." Zara nodded, sweat on her brow. Her teeth clenched, but her eyes locked on his without fear. This pain was not punishment, not destruction. It was creation. And she embraced it, like she once embraced her first steps. Hours passed like heartbeats, steady and strong. And then, at last, the child came. Small and perfect, covered in warmth and light. Rennie placed the baby on Zara's chest, and Zara let out a sound not of pain, but of joy, a laugh that broke into a sob. Leo wrapped his arms around them both, unable to speak, only able to feel. The baby's skin shimmered faintly, part human, part Varnock, something new. Something never before seen. Zara looked down at the tiny face, touched the small fingers, and whispered, "Alive." The child opened its eyes, deep blue like Leo's, but flecked with the silver glow of Zara's people. Around them, the colony waited quietly, holding their breath until Rini stepped out and raised her voice. "She has given birth." Cheers filled the tunnels, hands clapped against metal. Laughter echoed through the domes, and for a moment, no one remembered fear. The news spread faster than any council message. Rebels, outcasts, even old soldiers heard the name Zara and whispered about the child born from love. Some called the baby a miracle, some called it evolution, some called it dangerous. But none could deny that it existed, and the council, watching from far across the stars, could not erase it. A month later, Zara stood in the main hall of the colony, holding her child in her arms, Leo at her side, and the leaders of the free systems gathered before her. No one had asked her to lead, but everyone had come to listen. She spoke slowly, with strength. In every word, "They said I was not built to carry life, but I have," she continued, raising the child gently, not from science, not from force, but from love. "They said I was broken," she said. "But look at what I have built." The room was silent, and then the oldest elder stepped forward, his eyes full of tears. "You have built a future." They gave the child a name that day, Irene, meaning new light in Zara's native tongue, and the name spread like fire through the stars, lighting places where hope had once gone dark. In the months that followed, Leo continued his work, helping others walk, helping hybrids find strength in what made them different. Zara became something more than a symbol. She became a guide, friend, a mother, not just to her child, but to a rising world that had once lived only in shadow. Together, she and Leo raised Orion, not in fear, but in light, among those who chose unity over control. Sometimes, when the stars were bright, Zara would walk to the edge of the colony and stare upward. Holding her child close, she no longer felt cold or afraid or broken, only whole, only ready. And Leo, always beside her, would whisper, "They were wrong about you. to which Zara would smile and answer, "No, they were just too blind to see me." But now the galaxy saw her, and more importantly, so did her daughter. And in the gentle pulse of life against her chest, Zara knew the truth: she had not just survived, she had changed the stars. The end.